Hey, it's Doug Atkinson here at Identiverse 2018 in Boston, and we are joined by Robert Block, who is the SVP of Product Strategy at SecureAuth. Robert, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, you've been at this show for a couple of days now. It's going on behind us. Tell me a little bit about what you're talking to folks on the floor about, what you're talking to folks at breakout sessions about.
Sure.
What's kind of the topic of the moment for SecureAuth?
Most of our conversations center around the leveraging adaptive access to reduce friction at point of authentication. There's always this counterbalance between how do I be more secure, but at the same time, how do I really not burden my end users unnecessarily? Second factor of authentication, or MFA, does that in that it makes you more secure, but at a cost, right? And so we try to preach about the use of analysis and layers to help determine level of trust for that user. Therefore, I can reduce or increase friction relevant to the authentication. So I've had two breakouts around it. I think it's probably half the conversation in our booth is around that particularly.
Well, and it really is, that's really where the evolution is headed, right? The first stage was really, let's get it to work. But second stage is really, how do we get it to work with the least amount of friction for the end user?
Yeah, so I think it's almost an overcorrection in some respects, right? So, hey, the credentials we know are weak, passwords are terrible, we can't really find our way out of that solution this year, next year, or the following year. So let's put as much friction into the authentication process as possible. But then consumers said, hey, thanks, I'll take my business elsewhere, right? So now they're reacting to, hey, how do I make this secure but also give my users as least amount of friction as possible? How do I make this seamless to them? And then when I do have to apply friction, how do I give them control over which factors to choose? So whether do I want it on my SMS over text, do I want to get a symbol to accept, do I want to get an email pin, do I want a one-time password? The more configurable control you can give the end user, the more the user experience feels in their control, which is better for them.
So where are we in terms of kind of the larger adoption curve for this sort of technology with regard to end users being B2B or B2C or B2E? I mean, where are you finding we're at?
Well, so for years we've had separate solutions for all three user populations because we thought the needs were all different. Hey, guess what? The needs are all pretty similar. We have to secure a lousy credential, and we have to do it in as frictionless environment as possible, right? So whether, employees, we used to be able to think, hey, we can just tell them what to do because they work for us. But they go home and they have a digital persona that's a consumer persona that they have control over, right? So now it's meshing the world of how I want treated as an employee is also how I want treated as a digital consumer in my real life, and so I'm putting those same demands on my company. So I don't think anymore we can act like those populations are very different from a needs perspective. So we advocate for providing them the same level of flexibility, the same level of choice, and the same analysis-based friction, whether you're an internal employee, whether you're a consumer, or whether you're a B2B business partner.
So where are you finding traction these days? Who are the folks that are kind of coming to you? Where are they? What are they kind of screaming out for at this
So
point?
healthcare as a vertical tends to be more aggressive now than they have been in the last 2 or 3 years. The patient portal and EPHI initiatives and digital patient interactions are driving the need for greater authentication or more security around their portals. Retail and how they're converting to the sort of omni-channel approach to consumers are also sort of big advocates for all this pre-auth risk analysis because so many things are now done, no card present kind of online transactions. They're really sensitive to fraud. And then probably third is still finance. Finance has always sort of led the way from a compliance and regulatory perspective. So they're pushing more different innovative ways to do second factor authentication. So we're getting great traction from them and telling us, hey, we want this device accepted, that device accepted, et cetera, from a risk perspective. So finance seems to still sort of drive the curve.
So with regard to some of the macro technologies that are going to be happening over the next few years, 5G, AI, that sort of thing, what are those, how are those going to have an impact with regard, other than potentially just speed, with regard to authentication?
Yeah, so for us, buzzword bingo, machine learning, AI, right? Even our product in its next iteration will have levels of machine learning that some are supervised, some are unsupervised. But what it means to us is today we support, let's say 9 static layers of adaptive analysis. We can look at geo, we can look at device, we can look at geo velocity, we can look at offense, tomorrow with machine learning will harvest all this behavioral analytics about the organization, about those users, and then it will predict, hey, these might be good areas for you to analyze from a risk perspective. So it will essentially evolve adaptive into more advanced dynamic capabilities. So what's good for your organization might be different for that organization, might be different for this organization. And machine learning will help us achieve that organization.
So what would a piece of advice be that you would offer to a company that's kind of trying to take it to the next level? They have some authentication in place, but really, what are the things that you're really advising going forward?
Start looking at identity and security as one thing. So for years it's been separate silos, right? You do things in your SOC with your SIEM, you do things around your endpoint with vulnerability management, and you do things around point of authentication with MFA or SSO vendors like us, right? We're seeing more and more that all has to start to come together. So I want my CASB to inform my authentication solution around risk. I want my SIEM to inform my authentication solution around risk. I want my MDM solution to teach my authentication solution what a good trusted device is or isn't, right? So the more bi-directional sharing of data across those ecosystems, the more security becomes seamless to the end user, yet more secure to the organization.
Well, Robert, this has been very helpful. Thanks very much for coming over and sharing that. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. These things are getting bigger every year. It's amazing all the changes that are happening. Best of luck.
Great, thanks again.